Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fire for Breakfast. We're now on our third episode of 2026. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor of Fiber for Breakfast. In Washington this morning at 10 a.m., so right now, the Small Business Committee Subcommittee on Rural Development, Energy, and Supply Chain is holding a hearing titled Empowering Rural America Through Investments in Innovation. The Fiber Broadband Association provided written testimonial for the congressional record, emphasizing that fiber broadband is the economic backbone of AI and innovation, and it drives entrepreneurship, economic growth, and higher incomes in rural communities. Last week, NTIA issued updated general terms and conditions for the BEAD program. These conditions guide states and territories as they implement the BEAD program, and these three new conditions will keep the BEAD program focused on deploying reliable broadband infrastructure, especially fiber, to every corner of the United States. The three conditions are: Condition 50 prohibits states and territories from enforcing any state laws or regulation regulating broadband prices or net neutrality. Condition 51 prohibits subgrantees from accepting federal funds for BEAD-funded locations throughout the duration of the subgrant and subsequent federal interest period, so typically 10 years after the closure of the grant. And then the third condition is 13D, that imposes new requirements on grantees to achieve certain permitting milestones, including a 90-day timeline for permit adjudication. The FBA continues to work closely with NTIA as we identified innovation solutions to permitting challenges at the local, state, and federal levels. As a reminder, the Fiber Broadband Association will host its second annual Public Policy Summit and Fly-In D.C. on February 24th and 25th, bringing members together with congressional leaders, administration officials, and federal agency stakeholders to focus on how we can bring high-speed, reliable connectivity to all Americans. The Fiber Broadband Association is also kicking off our regional Fiber Connect workshops in Oklahoma City on Thursday, February 5th at the Kana Resort, with a focus on tribal broadband. As a part of this event, the FBA will be holding a special group roundtable lunch with Small Business Administration's Bill Gravel, with a focus on how SBA and the Trump administration can reduce regulatory burdens and streamline compliance for small businesses. So if you have a business based or operating in Oklahoma with fewer than 1,500 employees, we encourage you to join us for this discussion. So please reach out to our policy team if you're interested in participating. And last week on Fire for Breakfast, our guest was Brandy Ritter, the executive director of the Colorado's Broadband Office, discussed from strategies to sustainability, Colorado's broadband approach to reliable reach. So given Colorado's extremely diverse topologies, and they had to award over half of their unserved locations to LEO providers, largely Amazon LEO, they have a pretty big challenge ahead. So if you missed that, you can go to our website and watch the replay. Today on Five for Breakfast, our guest is researcher Elizabeth Parks, president and CMO of Parks Associates, discuss consumer study, assistive technology for older adults. As the president and chief marketing officer at Parks Associates, Elizabeth plays a pivotal role at Parks Associates. With over 2 decades of dedication to the company, she has been instrumental in shaping its growth and success, along with continued focus of timely and quality industry and consumer insights on the connected home and SMB industries. Elizabeth's leadership extends across a diverse range of responsibility. She's a driving force behind the company's research focus and coverage areas, ensuring that Parks Associates remains at the forefront of the industry trends and insights for broadband, consumer electronics, and home service market. Elizabeth's journey with Parks Associates began after graduating with a BA in psychology from the University of Texas at Austin. She lives in Plano with her husband and 3 children. So welcome, Elizabeth. And for audience, please type in your questions as go. With that, I will turn things over to Elizabeth.
Great. Thank you so much, Gary, and to the FBA for the invitation to join today and share a little bit of the research work that we're doing. I always also love to hear updates from you and follow all the great work that you all do at the association. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit more about one of our most recent consumer studies that we published. And as you noted, we are focused in on the consumer markets, and our survey data that I'm going to show you is coming off of survey work of 8,000 U.S. internet households quarterly. that we do on a very regular basis, and that that methodology we've had now for over a decade. So that's some of the data that I'll be showing, starting off here with just an understanding of how consumers get internet access today. And so you'll see here on these slides, again, the decline of cable internet, the rise of fiber. We also see the rise of 5G and wireless, and fixed also going down. So as we're tracking now, about 30% of households in the United States have fiber internet. And as we were discussing earlier, about 60% of the US with that fiber laid. And so those numbers matching up nicely. Within the research work that we're doing, and in this specific study, we were really looking at understanding how caregivers and seniors, anywhere from 55 and up, are using different types of technology. And this is built off of the idea that the consumer market continues to embrace connected devices in the home, and in particular, smart home devices. We're now tracking 49% of households in the US have at least one of these devices. And if you look at the entire US market, we're talking about 126 million households in the United States total. So 1% of households would be about 1.26 million households, just to give some context to that number. So within the research that we did in the study, it was looking to understand how these devices are being used, and what the role of connectivity is when we think about the foundation of reliable devices that can be interconnected and used to help people stay safe in their homes. And so I want to touch on that role of all connectivity that's going into the home, but where we're seeing the competition continue to grow across the different offerings. So the providers really are having to differentiate themselves now. It's got to be beyond speed, right? Everybody can practically give that gig of service. So what's the reliability? What's the cost? And what are the new bundles of services that can be provided? Fiber sits in this great position with these super high NPS scores, and we're going to continue to see this always on, very highly reliable network needing to be utilized, particularly when we think about any kind of safety and security and monitoring. And that goes along with this assisted care technology market. So when we look at that market, we see the caregiver market. Parks Associates is tracking at around 30 million households, and we're defining caregivers as somebody who is currently caring for an older adult or will be in the next 5 years. They see themselves that way. And so when you add that together, you get 25% of all households, or 30 million households, where they will be looking for technologies to help them make sure their loved one is safe and has everything that they need, and also that connection with an app and understanding the data and it being diffused even perhaps back to care providers when we think about remote monitoring and the medical side of things. We also look at where consumers are living and that size of the market of people who are in their own homes alone, and how important that's going to be to make sure that those members of certain households have different solutions available. So these were all the things that we were testing in the study that we did and published earlier this year, that assisted care technology. One of the things we have always been asking about with consumers is willingness to pay for different types of new solutions coming into market. Sometimes these solutions aren't even yet in market, and we're testing them as to see how consumers would respond. And when you look at these different demographic categories, you can see this incredible willingness, right, to use different devices and apps and voice controls, and even looking at innovative solutions like the oven sensors that can automatically cut off the stove before the fire burns the house down, right? These are really important things when you think about what happens sometimes when people are older and they just maybe forget to turn the oven off, right? That fire safety is a huge thing, and there is absolutely a willingness to pay. There's also a tie to insurance. So when we look across these markets, even 75 and up, there's absolutely a willingness for consumers to embrace new technologies. And again, all of this gets built off of this very solid and necessary network of reliable connectivity. So when we're talking to the broadband service providers, we're constantly asking them, what are the new services you're bringing to market? What is on the horizon for you all? And then likewise, we go back to the consumer and we say, what are you most interested in paying for? What are the things that are most important? There's a lot of things on here that we test with the value-added service market and willingness to pay. And these, I think, are really interesting in the yellow box, just very specific to senior and independent living. And this is not just for seniors, though, right? Any personal safety service. Would you pay for your daughter who's 19 to have a personal safety service if she's at college in an urban setting? You know, yeah, maybe you might. And there's a lot of people who might. So this goes across demographics, and also really interesting other notable things here like power backup, which is a real problem. So when you think about the energy problem across the US because of data centers, that is creating another opportunity for broadband providers to make sure you've got that reliable always on, which is built off of power, right? So backup power is another big one, in general. So a big thing to understand about this assistive care technology market is it's already here. We are showing 16 million households already using assisted care technologies noted in the box, right? We said, do you use a smart speaker? We have a battery of questions that we're asking consumers throughout. Do you have a sensor-based system? Are you using any monitoring for your loved one? And you can see just over the past couple of years, these millions of, a couple million households of growth, particularly when you think about recurring revenue and services, that is a lot of money. Right. And so if you're a fiber company laying the groundwork for connectivity, you're an enabler for that future revenue. You're also potentially a supplier. We see a lot of ISPs looking at what's my next service offering. Could I offer some kind of, senior living service add-on and capture those monitoring fees along with, let's say, a couple of cameras or sensor-based devices that have fall detection. All of this is already in market and here. And so it's really important to understand that the opportunity ends up being ginormous. I mean, it's billions and billions of dollars. And the reason is because you get service offerings that are, $35 to $55. Those were the numbers we were testing with willingness to pay with certain categories, and asking a consumer, if I could charge you $35 and gave you these 4 things to help monitor your loved one, would you pay that much money? And they say yes. All of this adds up to billions of dollars, right? So as a fiber company, you are that layer of connectivity that's reliability, but you're also that possibility when you're thinking about what are the services that I'm going to offer beyond internet speeds, right? Because that's a commodity now, right? This is one of those areas. And when you think about the rural market and the hospitals getting bought out by private equity and shut down, there's absolutely a need for this kind of thing. We're also testing telehealth use and all of the different remote patient monitoring opportunities as well. But the bottom line is consumers have to know about the technologies to be able to even want to buy them. And so we're in a world where the smart home is moving to mass market. That opportunity is there. And it's a great chance for you all as providers to ensure you understand it, that you're an enabler and potentially look at possible service revenue to capture, as well as serving communities. This ends up being a lot of local, older adults who need service. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share. We are celebrating our 40th year in business this year. And so we always appreciate the invitation to join the FBA. Hopefully I'll get to go to Bozeman, Montana, where my sister lives this summer, perhaps, and meet some of your members in person. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And yeah, we're looking forward to Bozeman. Hey, so just to start with, well, first of all, great stuff. I always enjoy your research, and this, having senior parents and that are living at home, this is very important to me personally. So when I look at other studies, especially AI studies, they all show that the quality of the broadband connection determines the type of applications that users do in their homes. So like, for instance, you have fiber, you're more apt to do telehealth and work from home or gaming or, online education, where, you showed high net promoter scores for like LTE and 5G, which would be more limited to more lightweight, like some light email and light web browsing. Have you looked at any those kind of the correlation between the quality of the connection and the type of applications in the home?
Yes, we actually do test all these different applications that are being used, and then we can look across the market depending on the type of internet service that the consumer has, and then marry that with the application. So we do see that fiber, generally there's a lot going through homes at this point with 17 connected devices in the home. And so the network continues to get built on top of, right, with that extension of devices throughout the home. And so the demographics, the people who have more people in a home, households that have children in them, households that are using streaming TV, right, which is now commonplace. 91% of households, I think, are streaming TV, and that decline of pay TV. The addition of security cameras, there's been an explosion. It's like people forgot that security cameras were invasive and they want them everywhere. We're seeing a lot on the outside of homes, but even security cameras in the home, and there's new ways to figure out how to make sure they're shut off and privacy. So the modern user of technology, which is practically everybody now, has all of this going on in their home. And so that always on, highly reliable connection becomes very important when you think about the home environment and the integration across devices.
Well, speaking of which, obviously AI is, can't be ignored anymore, right? It's invasive and pervasive and everywhere. So how do you, when you look at your research, how does AI impact or influence the future of broadband applications in the home?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question, because AI, like you said, it is everywhere. And I think we haven't seen the impact. In fact, I was just reading about another research study, I think by PwC, that said a survey of CEOs said that basically nobody is seeing a lift on revenue or a drop in costs because of AI usage. So we're still in the super early stages of AI technologies being deployed, which I really like to think of AI as just being, really, really very, very, very advanced software. It's very, very advanced software going on in the background. And there's so many different use cases that come to the forefront for the consumer side, and then the operator side in the background for service providers. Everything from the call center to customer service improvements to relying on your own set of data to look at, to understand where there might be faults going on in the experience, to be able to be proactive to fix things. to with a consumer, you've got AI built into routers, right? That is creating new applications like fall detection, or I can tell somebody's going to have a heart attack 3 days before it happens because of how they were walking. I mean, these are real technologies that are new and that are out there and that are coming. So, AI is like the internet. It's huge. And so I think we've already seen some impact of everybody jumping in, and now it's going to be, how do we monetize this? What's the best use cases? And because of the speed of AI tech being deployed, the next generation is always 3 weeks later. So companies have to figure out, how do I keep up with this within operational, when you operationalize it? If you've got something new coming out all the time, how do you do that? So I still think there's a lot of maturity that needs to go into this big, huge market, but it is going to be hugely impactful. And I hope it doesn't take lots of jobs. I think people are important. So it's hopefully enhancing the people that are being used.
Oh, so one of the questions that came from audience is that it looks like when you on your net promoter scores all jumped up in 2025 across the board. What attributes to that?
Probably that costs are low and there's more bundles being available. So we consistently see higher NPS when consumers are offered and take more bundled services. And we are seeing an increase in bundled services being offered, and the unbundling of pay TV and then the rebundling of whatever, right? It could be streaming, it could be no entertainment, it could be the VPN, it could be parental controls. So those bundles, we think, are helping to drive up NPS across the board. And it's very competitive, so the pricing is cheap right now. I mean, everybody is going low on pricing and high on bundles. So we think that's why.
So one of the things, I've seen in my own home is that, I have 5 gig symmetric with Live Oak Fiber. So, and, my Wi-Fi 6E can't provide that level of service, so I can do fiber to my desktop. Do you see, all these applications you talk, there are kind of wired and wireless options. Are you seeing a trend towards being able to have homes more fiber to the room and are wired options versus relying on Wi-Fi?
I think consumers think of Wi-Fi as the internet in their home. If you ask them if they have internet, they'll say, "Yeah, I have Wi-Fi." So those terms are sort of interchangeable in the consumer's mind. I think there is a reality of understanding that a wired internet for heavy bandwidth activities, wired is still very much in play. The big thing that we're seeing between mobile and fixed is the combination and that uptake. Now, I think it's 26% of households across the US take those two services together. And 3 to 5 years ago, that wasn't even an offer, really. So there's been incredible growth in the past few years of that particular bundle. And that is a landmine of opportunity for other services. Because, you've captured your customer in all way, with their mobile device and with their home environment. And then the data that the service provider is getting on the background to be able to come up with, what else would this person spend money on? And what other products and services do we offer is huge. So I think that combination is the big offer right now is the mobile plus the fixed internet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Wall Street used to say the first to fiber wins the broadband business, and then it wasn't long after they started saying the first to fiber also wins the mobile wireless business. And what you're seeing is just incredible amount of ARPU once you've been able to capture both the broadband and wireless business. So one of the things that you mentioned, it's consumers typically, like if you ask a consumer, what's the difference between Wi-Fi and broadband, they don't know, right? I mean, and so when you ask what service they have, we find it's very difficult to get good answers from consumers because they really don't have an idea whether their service is fiber or cable or wireless. All they know is, it works. And so we have to put in different questions, qualifying questions to really see if they gave us the right answer. How are you guys able to ensure that when someone says that they have 5G, that they really have 5G?
Well, our market research business is sophisticated in its survey work and questionnaire. That's a skill we've built. And we've been tracking fiber since it was introduced to the market. Before internet, we were tracking dial-up broadband. We did telephone surveys back in the 80s. So we've been tracking the market since every connected device since it was introduced, and we do it in this really specific way. So we also track things like speeds, and we understand, consumers don't really know what their speeds are, but we still track them, and now we have really great trending data over what people say they think they have. So we still think there's a lot of value, and when you look at our data, particularly because we don't just have one set of data, we have other sets of data, but our consumer survey work is a proprietary data set that feeds into our forecast models, feeds into all of our other work, and then we have other sourcing as well. So we are constantly looking at the markets and the providers and all of the different data sets out there to ensure that we're providing what we believe to be the most reliable view of the market. So we track, I think we track close to about 350 streaming service providers in North America, as well as all of the major broadband providers. So, we work all of our different angles to assure that our data, reflects the market the most accurate that we believe. So yeah, good question.
Another question from our audience is, where do robotics fit in with the future of aging in place?
I think that's a great question. And I think before we see human-looking robots that we could afford, we'll see more like a rolling box robot that can perform things like bring somebody their food from the kitchen counter and roll over, So I think that that's coming. I still think humans, especially when we talk about taking care of people, it's hard to get rid of the human element there. But I do think there's a place for robots, and I didn't see as many robots at CES as I thought I would, to be honest. So I was a little disappointed this year at the lack of, human robot looking things at CES.
Yeah, I guess when I think of robots, I think more like robotic vacuums and all kinds of appliances and things like that. That as they start getting, I would see home networking and being able to, as you mentioned, bundle all these things together into one seamless. But yeah, it's interesting now. All right. Well,
and iRobot went bankrupt, so that's a sad tale actually of a story that didn't make it with their robot vacuum. There's a new company called Dreamy, which has got a lot of fancy robot things, vacuum cleaners, and then the robot lawnmower. I saw a lot of robot lawnmowers at CES. So,
well, Elizabeth, we really appreciate all the important research that you and your team at Parks Associates provides our industry. It's very useful, and we appreciate you giving us an update today. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're going to get back together next Wednesday with my good friend, Eric Baffert, the Chief Technology Officer of the Office of Infrastructure at the Maryland Department of Information Technology. I got to hang out with Eric in Annapolis in the fall. Just great things, what he's doing in his office and what's going on in Maryland. He'll be discussing cracking the code on broadband coordination inside the single views. You're not going to want to miss that. So we'll see you guys next Wednesday. And Elizabeth, hopefully we'll see you in Bozeman here this summer.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for the invitation.
All right. Thanks, everyone.